Hi, hello, and welcome to Simbly Sports. And we are back with F1 a recap of this month, which is March. Um, this is April 1st, so we are not trying to fool anyone, but it has been a rather fascinating month, I guess, because first and foremost, let me introduce the panel. Obviously, Anirudh, um, who's right now in Canada, and Mr. Uh, Ashwin, who's in Chennai. Both of you, how was March for F1?
Fascinating, I would say, because the way it started, basically we got to see everything in what's new with the season in F1 with the testing with the one proper testing coming in, us making an assumption as to like which team is going to do well. And then even before the season started, even before the first race, there was a lot of um, talk about is this the true performance of the team? Or is a particular team sandbagging and all that stuff. So as they say, like the first race, all the bags come off, and there's no hiding behind anything. And what we saw in pre-testing for the first time in many years, it was actually truth as well in terms of performance ratings. Of course, the performance of some teams were like extremely shocking, but most of it, we were like, okay, what we saw in testing, we more or less saw the similar sort of an order in the first race. The second race was a little bit more surprising, but there was only a gap of 1 week between the two races, so I don't think teams had too much time to like develop or like do anything different. But yeah, in terms of racing quality, we've seen some fantastic racing. We can see that the new generation of cars are able to follow each other well, which is also resulting in a lot of um, like in previous seasons, you had cars that would overtake and then pull away because the car behind could not like follow closely, and this was a problem. Like so, you had to wait for the DRS zone to come in again. Whereas here, it may okay, at least in the Saudi Arabia track it was probably the layout as well, but even in Bahrain you could see a lot of like very smart racing going on because people had the confidence. They knew that even if you let it go now, you still had a chance to follow up and like catch up again. So I think the new cars are definitely successful in their sort of design philosophy that was brought out in the regulation, that you should be able to follow more closely so that you have more chances of having a proper dice with the person that you are trying to get ahead of, or proper fight is this is there on the track between two evenly matched rivals for any position, not just the lead but for any position. So yes, I've enjoyed it. I'm quite looking forward to Australia because it's the first like proper gap between two races that is coming up this season. So trying to see if certain leading teams can bring in even more updates. If there is a breakaway pack, if there's a clear two competitors, and then there's a clear midfield, and then there's a clear couple of backmarking teams and all that. So right now the clear leaders are there, but the middle order is still a little muddled up because of other events, other happenings in the race and all that. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see that.
And Ashwin,
Yeah, I'd have to agree with everything that was said. Uh, in terms of the first two races, especially Saudi Arabia being a street circuit and being one of the faster races of the two of them, it was very interesting to see how the cars are able to stick very closely to each other and follow them. The thing that comes particularly to mind when discussing the Saudi Arabia race is Alonso and Ocon in the first few laps, in the first 10 laps of the race. that was a very interesting battle. It was nice to see Alonso back there again, pushing it and uh, racing. Like his racecraft is something that just never goes away. So it was nice to see him being able to hold the car up for that long. Unfortunate with the reliability issue, he had to retire, but what little we saw of him was definitely beautiful. Uh, Not to take away from the fact that we had the Ferrari and the Red Bull fighting for first position. Like Anirudh said, DRS and your track position, getting into the DRS detection zone determined how the rest of the lap went and who ended up in the front. But it's comparing both the races, it's definitely been a change where we're actually able to see the new regulations kick in. Of course, maybe Mercedes and the Mercedes customer teams are not particularly very happy with the way it turned out, but Ferrari, I mean, it's lovely to see the prancing horses back right up there, finishing with the 1-2 in their first race with the new regulations and getting two podiums again in the second race. I mean, that's just amazing with the bad 2 years that Ferrari's had.
I was
Speaking of,
just about to ask what changed because Ferrari all of a sudden, right, and it has a clear lead in the standings, right? Ferrari has around 78 points and four podiums in the first two. So
Yeah.
what
No,
what is
I
the
don't
change?
think I don't so Formula One especially, like, there is no
And sorry for my
specific.
ignorance. Sorry for my ignorance. What change has happened for Ferrari to
No, that's what I'm
capitalize?
trying to say. The change is basically the huge regulations that have come in this year, and Ferrari has been preparing for it, like, eagerly, like, earnestly for the last couple of years. Like teams, like, so you could ask, like, like, how is it that, Red Bull was still able to, like, like, have a great car last year, and they've still managed to do well. Well, there are a couple of things. Number one is, these regulations are have been introduced 1 year late. They were supposed to be introduced in 2021 itself, and it was delayed because of COVID. Like, like the teams were they continued to race with the previous generation of cars for an additional year. So it was delayed in terms of the regulation. Um, and So a lot of teams have devoted different energies to, like, to get the best out of these new regulations. Like when the previous regulations came out, Mercedes was pretty much like a mid-level team before that. And when the first hybrid era came out and all that, they were like they were like class of the field because they had been preparing for those 2 3 years. Now Ferrari has had the advantage to prepare for the last couple of years where they were not in the title fight. They clearly knew they didn't have the fastest car, but they were there to take, like, like, make the most of opportunities. Like in terms of, if the leading team stumbled, then Ferrari was able to take advantage of the opportunity. So they were able to, like, sort of learn, and they I think, I personally feel Ferrari is one of the best driver combinations of this year, and they managed to get a couple of young, talented drivers, and they've managed to lock them down. Like they've had Charles Leclerc for a few years now. They got in Carlos Sainz, who's known to be like a very stable, very good driver, and they are trying to extend his contract as well to ensure like long term stability. And it's fascinating. So you have the hunger as well that is, like, going in. The entire team is hungry for success. They haven't been successful for a fairly long time now. The last championship they have is basically Kimi Raikkonen winning in like 2007.
yeah,
So they are hungry for success, and they are. I mean, all said and done, Ferrari is Formula One's longest serving team. They are probably one of the biggest brands in the world of motorsport. So, you know, given their past successes, it was about time that they managed to do something. So I'm not entirely surprised with with that Ferraris managed to do this, especially the amount of time they've spent. I would have been surprised if they were not fast after having spent all this time, and if they had managed to come up with a middling car or something like that. Then I don't know how people would have reacted to that, but there was the pressure, and I think the pressure is rubbed off positively on them to come up and come up with a very competitive package.
Are you surprised by the fact that how, with all these changes, new teams like Haas been able to perform like this? By the way, I'm talking like this because I've started watching the Netflix show. I haven't finished the first season. By the time IPL has already started, so I'm trying very hard to finish it. And it's extremely fascinating. Very well done documentary, by the way. I was completely intrigued, and we are so all the Haas, everything is slowly coming inside. So with all these regulations, is like Haas or something like someone similar are able to perform well as well. How do you see that? Because all the long-standing cars, long-standing are also there. Williams are all there, but a new entrant is able to perform, but Williams is unable to. What changed?
There are that's what regulation change does. It basically gives you a level playing field and kind of resets the order. If you take McLaren for example, towards the end of the last or the previous regulations, especially in the 2021 season, they had a very competitive car. At least one driver was able to make the most of the car, and we had, I think, Norris had three podiums last year alone. So when you have a team like McLaren that was doing so well in the last regulations, the new regulations come in, it kind of upsets the order. It kind of gives everybody an opportunity to start afresh. And it's how you do that particular engineering and you put together the car, you set it up, that makes a difference. Of course, the power unit is a big player in all of this. Haas, being a Ferrari customer, gets the Ferrari engines. So they don't have to worry about the power unit reliability because Ferrari is proven to be, or the Ferrari power unit has proven to be extremely reliable. The same thing goes for Alfa Romeo. They are also a Ferrari customer team where they get the engines from Ferrari. So they are also able to perform. I think they've also had two races back to back with at least one car finishing in the points. The first race in Bahrain, both of them finished in the points. And I think Saudi, Valtteri Bottas retired. So the other car finished in the points. I think I got it right. Arvind can correct me if I have it incorrectly there.
No,
Yeah.
he didn't finish in the points. No.
Yeah, so it gives you an option to start afresh. And Williams, they've had a lot of restructuring that's been going on. They've just not been able to somehow nail the engineering part of it. Through testing, it looked like they had a very reliable car, apart from one or two incidents with Nicholas Latifi. Well, I think it was Crofty that said during one of the testing sessions in Bahrain that the team or the engineers would prefer to have a car that is a little higher on performance but slightly low on reliability, as opposed to the other way around. Because when you have a car that is higher on performance and probably not so great on reliability, at least you know that your car can deliver. It's just a question of how long maybe the car can deliver. Williams is struggling with having a reliable car but no performance. They're not able to get, whether it's the aero package or whether it's the power unit from Mercedes. Power unit from Mercedes being slightly a bit of a factor because we have Aston Martin, we have Mercedes themselves, and we have McLaren that have been struggling to get the power unit working for them. So with this season, I can see why Williams is struggling. I'm hoping it's not long before they also get into a groove and they're able to bring better upgrades as the season progresses. Because I would love nothing more than to see Williams, the legendary Williams name, coming back to fight in the midfield and fight for podiums and eventually for race wins as this new regulation, keeps building on. Um, Also, another thing that I wanted to add when we were discussing about the month of March, there have been a couple of interesting updates that came through. a brand new track added for 2023 with Las Vegas. Essentially, we're going back to Vegas because there was a race that was there previously, but there's a brand new circuit altogether. And Seb was out for the first two races, which was unfortunate. He will be back for Australia. He'll be back in time for Australia after COVID. So we have that change. It was very nice to see a Hulkenberg back again racing. It's I think the hashtag Hulkenback took off very well, and he also seems to have gotten very used to being called in the last minute on a Thursday evening and be like, "Hey, hi, we need you to race this weekend." So that was very nice to see Hulkenberg back racing again with the new regulations with a new car. And yeah, what else have we had? We had Vegas. We had Seb was out. Hulkenberg was back. And anything else I'm missing, Arvind?
Nikita Mazepin was sent out from Haas, and Kevin Magnussen was the last minute
Mag.
parachute in.
Oh yeah, Magnussen definitely.
And his
Magnussen being
performance
back is
has been fantastic. So
yeah true.
it's like so he's I think I mean like just adding to what you already said. Haas is also a team that basically threw away 2 years of development time on their current vehicle, like with the last generation of vehicles. And even very early in 2021, they basically took the call that they were not going to develop the car. So they basically ran the same car for the entire season. And you can and they did a lot of background changes as well. Like they moved some of the design teams to work out of the Ferrari facility at Maranello, where they rented some of the facilities. They buy a lot of parts from Ferrari itself.
Correct.
They rent the Ferrari wind tunnel. They do a lot of work in collaboration. So I think that stability has also helped them. That clear focus on making most of the new regulations, because they did not have the resources to concentrate on developing a car to just keep it in the midfield and also build a
Yeah.
new car for the regulations. Like even when you saw in Saudi, you can still see that they are, I mean, they are a team very much on budget, because Mick Schumacher had a huge crash, and
Million
they
dollars. Yeah.
yeah, and then they opted not to rebuild his car so that he could go and race in Australia, because their biggest worry was that if he had another shunt like that in the race, or even in any other subsequent sessions, they probably won't have enough spare parts to even build a car in Australia. So they're still
Right.
very much running on a huge budget. So it is heartening to see their performance now. I'm just hoping to see if this is going to continue throughout the season, or if they
I hope
progressively
so too.
get
Yeah.
shuffle down the order as other teams finally find their bearings, and they make forward strides.
Right. I
So
mean, I think it was after qualifying P9, Kevin Magnussen said that maybe the car had something more to give, and he just was not able to find the
yeah,
right pace. So it's not. I think it was the very first time we are hearing Haas saying that we're not happy with Q3, we're not happy with top 10. We felt like maybe we could have pushed for top six, which is I'm very happy for the team as a whole. Very happy for Mick because we know that he's been somebody that can race with his F2 seasons. So he came in last year knowing that there was going to be no way that their car was going to be able to fight for points. So it's nice to see him and have a competitive car under him that can give him the opportunity now to fight regularly for points, even if it is finishing uh, 8, 9, 10, which is a massive change for Haas from where they were. Uh,
yeah,
all of
from being perennial
all of
backmarkers,
exactly.
even to finish in the midfield. So yeah, I mean, as you're saying, if they can continue this form throughout the season, it'll be fascinating to to other teams that are struggling, that have arguably better resources but are still struggling, to
Yeah,
Haas, who has
Gunther
made this
Steiner
work.
would probably be the happiest man in the paddock for the entire season after that. I can
Yeah,
see him just walking. I can't wait to see what Netflix has to do with Gunther Steiner now for season 5 of Drive to Survive, with how the team is performing, or at least how they've started performing. It'll be lovely to see him. And Haas social media keeps ramping it up with the boat memes from the previous season 4 of Drive to Survive. So it's nice to see them getting a little more limelight and being able to deliver a little bit more in terms of performance and in terms of fighting for great positions at the end. Uh, they have, or Haas right now is higher in constructors compared to McLaren and I guess Aston Martin as well. So
Yeah, yeah. I don't think
imagine
Aston
that.
finished in the points as well.
Both
In
the races, yeah, no, I
in
don't think they
Saudi
did. Yeah,
Arabia, because Stroll had to retire after that incident with Albon,
Albon
and
in the end. Yeah,
Hulkenberg like finished like 12th or something like that. So I think
yeah.
yeah, the biggest surprise has been Aston Martin in terms of, yeah, you can say like in terms of, sure, the power unit is probably not at its peak at the moment, and but even then, like for them to make such a hoopla at the start of the season, and for the
I think
car to basically qualify 17th and 18th, it just
I felt
seems
the car
like,
looked pretty good, at least in Barcelona testing.
yeah.
Uh, it seemed like it was put together pretty well, and they had a good setup
No, they
of the
had
car
pretty
for
much
both
like
drivers.
similar concepts to the Ferrari, like like in terms of how the side pods were initially sculpted and all that.
Right.
But I'm not entirely sure, like how they've. I mean, if it's just a Mercedes power unit integrated with that sort of a design that's not working well, or like God knows, because even the Mercedes power in unit, they've basically changed the architecture, is what I read. There's been a
Okay.
major change as to like how the turbochargers are like are like mounted this season, and the way the car is packaged, and that is one reason why Mercedes has that very unique looking side pod design, because they are able to
Right.
package it that way. So I don't know if if that has caught out the customer teams who are probably not expecting a package like that. I mean, you have several design
Highly likely.
iterations that keep going backward and forward, but I don't know if they committed, and then Mercedes managed to find this design change, and like just caught them sleeping or something, like. I mean, Mercedes themselves
Maybe.
are not doing like great at the moment, so I mean, one cannot make any sort of a judgment based on
Yeah.
just purely that. But it just seems odd that all the Mercedes powered customer teams are like pretty much making
Almost at
up
the
the
bottom.
bottom six.
Yeah. Yeah. It
So
is.
it seems way too much of a coincidence.
Yeah, and it's almost like the story of the boy that cried wolf, because and I mean no pun intended when I say boy that cried wolf. Uh, Throughout the Bahrain testing, everybody felt that Mercedes was sandbagging classic Mercedes style again. I think it was Russell
Even
and
to
Hamilton, both of
Q2
them,
of
that said,
Bahrain, they were saying that they're like, Mercedes
"Yeah, we don't have
Q3 and qualifying is when you're going to see Mercedes like blow away everyone and all that, and
right,
then nothing
right,
happened.
right." I mean, I think Carlos Sainz summed it up perfectly when he said this is classic Mercedes.
Yeah,
So yeah, everybody thought that was the case, and then the race played out the way it played out. They got very lucky with the podium
yeah,
for Hamilton, with both the Red Bulls having that unfortunate power unit fuel pump issue, as they said. And then we had Saudi Arabia, where Hamilton, for the first time, I think since 2009, or sorry, 2017, had a Q1
yeah. Purely on performance
departure.
basis, you're right with both those dates. But in 2017, it was the weather that
It
caught
was
him
a
out.
crash.
In
Right.
2009, in terms of pure performance, him like not getting out of Q1 is the first time since 2009.
Exactly. So you know that he's an extremely consistent driver when it comes to qualifying. I mean, you don't have to question Lewis Hamilton's racing credentials at all. So to see him finish in Q1, that was a shock. And I think that's probably when almost everybody realized that, okay, maybe Mercedes really wasn't kidding.
Yeah.
And
And
yeah,
that car
but
seems to
again,
be like on a real knife edge there. I think the settings are like, the setting window is so narrow that, a little bit this way, that way, and the car almost feels undrivable. Like, like somebody of Hamilton's caliber who's basically excelled at finding the right setup, like, with like
exactly.
whatever donkey of a car under him, he still managed to find the right
Yeah,
kind of a setup. For him to like struggle that much to just find the
you
right
know, there
setup.
is something mechanically an
I
issue
mean,
with the vehicle.
the car not being great, and like, you can always expect that, he'll probably still be like fifth or sixth or something like that. Like, okay, fine. Like, the car is not good enough for the front row. But for him, like, to be in 16th, like, I just shows that, that setup window is like so narrow that a small change outside the setup window and the car like really struggles to even put down basic performance.
No,
So,
yeah, absolutely. He's one of the old guards of Formula One, where it is like you said, irrespective of the vehicle that you give them, they extract the most out of it.
yeah.
Alonso was another person that still does that very well. Any car you give him, he can really push that. He can get maximum performance out of it. So for somebody like Hamilton to not be able to get that from the W13 is concerning, to say the least. Uh, as much as the internet would like to go on and on about Hamilton versus Red Bull and all of that, it feels odd not having Mercedes fighting up there for the top three. Whether it's in terms of strategy, everybody trying to poke a hole into the other person's strategy, trying to have one car undercut or overcut the other. It's odd not seeing Mercedes up there. As much as I'm loving Ferrari's return, throwing in another team, adding two more vehicles to the mix would just be amazing. Monza 2019, Leclerc and Hamilton, that battle, like more of that this season, I will take that. Like we've already had Verstappen and Leclerc for the first two races, and I can't wait for more of those. There is, you can see that there is immense respect that both of them have for each other when it comes to racing, and the racecraft is beautiful. Uh,
But you
We've
do
not seen
somewhere in the background, don't you think that they're gonna end up in the barrier sometime? Like, it just they just have such a history, like Leclerc
Ferrari.
and Verstappen. No, Leclerc
Oh
and
no, I don't
Verstappen,
doubt
like
at all.
somewhere
I don't doubt that there is an episode coming
there
with
is
both
there
of
is there
them.
is something around the corner where like they're just going to, one of them is gonna take the other out, and it's just gonna
There is.
end up in tears all around.
Yeah, I don't doubt that both of them are gonna bang wheels at some point during one of the races during the season, and that's going to be a whole another drama for the 2022 season again. But at least what we're seeing now, it brings back the race that Leclerc had with Verstappen in 2019, Silverstone 2019, Austria at the Red Bull Ring.
Yeah.
Like you could see, and there was a time where Verstappen was probably getting his elbows out a lot more than he was getting it out, at least in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. There wasn't a lot of pushing each other off the track. He was very respectful, very proper wheel to wheel racing, and he was just great. So I'm looking forward to all of that. But throwing in Hamilton into the mix with his racecraft, that's a constructor and driver championship. That's just for the ages. Can't wait for that.
I
Okay.
mean, honestly, I'm just echoing your comment here. I'm just really waiting for the Barcelona updates to like come in, and hopefully we can have like a three-pronged constructor title.
Right.
The 15 minutes that you two were talking to each other, most of the things just went over my head, and it's very easy to go over my head right now. And I've opened up some 50 tabs. What is W13? What is? I mean, I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to figure out. After some time, I just decided to stop it. I'm planning to go.
W13 is Mercedes' car
Yeah.
for this year. It's
Okay.
W12, W11. That's how it goes. So for this year, it's W13.
I just didn't understand. I mean, I'm planning to go back to the video, pull up Google or something, and start understanding every single thing that you just said. So let's just talk about in a just like 2 minutes about the following things. 2 minutes about Mick Schumacher's accident.
Well,
An
see,
expensive one, a very
yeah,
expensive
very
one.
expensive. He was, I think, like, like, see, Mick Schumacher. It was, if it's actually quite interesting that it was brought up during the race as well. Mick Schumacher had a very similar sort of an incident in last year's race where he basically lost control and went into the barriers probably like one corner before he did in the same track. And this time he is like, again, it was pure driver error. There was nothing wrong in the car, or like, nothing failed on the car or something like that. He was just trying too hard. And I believe that, having a driver of the caliber of Kevin Magnussen, and don't get me wrong, like, Kevin Magnussen is a fantastic driver through all the way through his junior Formula, like, like what he's like, he was very, very highly rated. He was thrown in the deep with like, McLaren when they were like, struggling, and um,
I
you
think he
know,
drove with Hamilton also one season.
no, no. So he started with McLaren, went to Renault, and then from Renault he came to Haas.
Okay.
And then basically at the end of 2020 he was let go from Haas. 1 year he was just like, going all over the place and all that. But he's a driver
Right.
of very high basic talent and basic ability, and you can, and having him in the car is probably putting pressure on like Mick Schumacher, who didn't have the same sort of a pressure. He was very easily able to beat his teammate last year. This year, even to just match up to his teammate, he's having to perform at a much higher level. So that particular pressure was a very scary crash. I was actually watching qualifying, and like the entire qualifying session was delayed by at least 40 minutes, purely because they were trying to like rebuild the barriers and get him to the hospital. And then, like, I mean, obviously it was great that that he was unhurt and he was able to, like,
Walked away
basically
from
walk
it
away
with
from it.
barely nothing at
Almost,
all.
yeah, because initially when the crash happened, they were like, he was still in the car. He was in the car for a very long time, and even the medical team, at least from what the commentators were saying, like, the medical team was like, trying to determine if they could, like, if they had to lift him out of the car, like, so Formula One cars, you can actually lift the driver out along with the seat if it is so required, so that you're not, like, causing even more injury while, like, extracting them from the car. So um yeah, so it was good that he was unhurt. It's terrible for Haas, as how Ashwin said. Like, they have a huge repair bill, which I don't know if they can even afford at the moment, after having all their recent troubles with, like, losing their title sponsor, and, like, not able, and still running a predominantly white car with not many other sponsors on it. So I'm not entirely sure if they have the budget. So it is a definite knock, but it was pure driver error. It's probably caused by pressure to over deliver. Yeah, and probably the track uh, also caught him out. Like, it's a very high speed street circuit. It probably caught him out. So some more experience. Maybe he won't repeat it next year.
Okay. We go for the
Yeah.
next one. Bahrain Grand Prix.
Go
Two
ahead.
Uh,
minutes.
First race of the season gave us everything. A lot of wheel to wheel racing, couple of good overtakes, uh, smart racing from Charles Leclerc, letting Verstappen go through in the first corner and then getting him again. He did that not once but thrice. So that was amazing. Nice to see the regulations working. Very, very happy for Ferrari. Their first 1-2 after 2019 in Singapore with Seb and Leclerc finishing 1 and 2. So they waited for a long time. It was nice to see Ferrari kicking off 1 and 2 after 2 years, and the first team to do it this season. Yeah, it's been a good circuit. It's always been a good circuit. There have always been good battles that we've seen. Uh, Unfortunate for Red Bull with the reliability issue. They seem to have a very good car. Uh, Perez was all set to take that podium, but didn't work out. Verstappen was all set to take that second place, but again didn't work out. So yeah, personally, a very good race, a very good start for the season for all teams.
Yeah, just talking about that Red Bull power unit, what are you talking about? It's quite interesting that three of the Red Bull power units failed during the
And
Bahrain
the only
Grand
thing
Prix,
that didn't was Yuki.
and the fourth one basically could not even start the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Like Yuki
Right.
Tsunoda basically stopped on the way to the grid with a power unit issue again. So again, that's something to probably look out for this season. Like as you said, probably they have an amazing power unit, but how reliable is it really? So
Yeah,
something to look out for. Yeah, fantastic.
I'll let you take it.
In terms of action, in terms of overall action, right from qualifying onwards, you had unexpected results happening all the way through. Um, you had amazing. Uh, you felt as if the drivers were maturing very quickly in terms of finding the sweet spots on the track, and like tactically being smart in terms of like Verstappen, the mistake that he made in Bahrain in terms of attacking Leclerc repeatedly at the same corner and then basically losing out. Um, he proved that he had learned from that, and in the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, even though the first time he basically did the same thing, from the second instance onwards he was like prepared for it, and you had the it was almost comical to see both of them breaking before the DRS line, at the this thing, both of them locking up and just before the DRS line. But tactically, that it shows that uh, that the drivers are learning from that. And yeah, great
Well,
great
let's look at it like this. At least they didn't go into each other like last year. Hamilton and Verstappen did. One guy tries to let the other guy go,
Yeah,
and they bang into
yeah,
each other.
but
So
but there
yeah,
again, again, it shows that Verstappen is like learning from that. It's like
exactly.
uh, he's like he just braked. He was basically in the middle of the track when he braked. So this time at least, both of them were on either side of the track, and it was
Right.
clean racing overall. So yeah, I mean, I'm not entirely sure if Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, the way the circuit is designed, if it provided all the action that it could have, because you have like extremely high speed corners, and um, like, like some of the sections of the track where you can't really do much other than follow, and then you have these two DRS zones, basically one behind the other, where it's like a shoe in, and whoever is tactically smarter is probably just getting in the front. So I'm not yet convinced that this can be called one of the sort of classic Grand Prix race circuits, but we'll have to wait and see, because I remember Bahrain, the first 3 or 4 years, they actually had a moniker for it, and they used to call it Boar Train. So the races used to be processional and all that, but from then on, Bahrain has like really, like it's one of those events where something interesting is going to happen during the year. So it's like how we look forward to Bahrain. I don't know if Saudi Arabian Grand Prix is something that's going to be looked forward to, but we'll have to
And if the
see.
drivers have their say in it, based on the events that took place
Yeah,
on Friday of the session, the
yeah,
whole thing with the safety and security, with a lot of drivers not being the happiest racing there, I don't know what
yeah.
type
I
of changes
mean,
are going to be there. And
yeah. I
also
mean,
in terms of the circuit,
ultimately, they have their way of saying what they want to say and all that. But at the end of the day, there is a contract, and you have to You have to be
Yeah, that's
respectful
true.
of the contract. So, um, and as like people say, like like there are so many places that they go and race in, which have historically not have had things
The
that
best track
like
records.
sorry.
Yeah, they don't have the best track records when it comes to a lot of the things that
Yeah,
they seem to
it's
say
like
that they stand for.
it's like saying like oh my God, Formula One should never go race in Germany because of the war crimes that they committed
Right.
during the Second World War. Like how can we forgive them? But things have moved on, and like people have proved that they are capable of change. So you have to give people the opportunity that if they want to evolve, and if they want to like have a more open way of thinking, then at least that opportunity is like deserved, right? Like before we paint with like broad strokes and say that oh my God, the human rights record in this particular place are terrible, and therefore this thing. So hey,
I don't
so
think if we were to make decisions based on that, I'm not sure how many tracks would be left at the end of the season if
yeah,
we were to
exactly. Like
scrutinize every track that keenly.
yeah, I mean, like there's a new track that's been added in the US now, like like and traditionally US has never been a like a Formula One market. So
Yeah,
and like people are saying that oh my God, this is like the Formula One is going after like money, like like, but at the end of the
right,
day,
right,
it's a
right.
business. They have to make the money, right? Like if the US is willing to give them that money, why would they not go there?
Yeah, and that's speaking of US specifically. That's actually been something that Liberty Media is something a market that they are actively trying to get into. It's
Yeah,
a huge sports market that's available, and it's something that they've been pushing to get a strong hold in. With NASCAR being the biggest motorsport in the US, so these guys are trying to change that. So it just might happen.
yeah,
Okay, Australian Grand Prix. I'm actually looking forward to the Australian Grand Prix. Uh, Somehow it feels a little odd where that's not the first race of the season.
yeah,
Because I think
yeah.
ever since 2013, that's always been the first race of the season. So it feels odd when we don't start there. Uh, Ricardo's home circuit, I'm hoping he has a little bit of luck, but that's probably just wishful thinking with the way the car is behaving. As a Daniel fan, it's going to be a difficult race to watch, but yeah, with the new changes that they made, I think turn 20 is it that they have a new
Yeah, no,
turn?
the traditional chicane that they had, like between the fast chicane has been
Right.
like changed over. So it's a more flowing sort of uh, design now, rather than just being like
Right.
a fast chicane. So
Okay.
yeah, I mean, and then they say that that's going to lead to more closer racing. So we have to watch.
True.
We have to
True.
we have to see how it comes up. I'm actually excited, like, well, fairly excited to see Sebastian Vettel back, and to see like
Exactly.
if because he missed the first two races because of his COVID results. But
And I think as far as Seb is concerned, the first race for him is still Australia. That's not changed at all.
yeah, no, and we can actually see, like like if that Aston Martin car is really as bad as
It's made out
how
to
it's
be.
been how it's been made out to be, because Hulkenberg, like you said, he was a last minute substitute, so he would not have had any experience driving the car. So he was basically making up the numbers, but still did a pretty good job of it.
Right.
And Stroll is always an unknown quantity, so I'd really like to see the performance gap between Vettel and Stroll. If they end up just one behind the other on the grid, then you know that the car is terrible. But
If there's
then
a
two,
change
yeah,
in Seb's position where he finishes, then
yeah,
that's really saying something about how good the car is or how they can deliver the performance.
or how terrible Stroll is, or
Okay.
whatever.
All that.
Okay, that has been a fascinating session. So this month has been interesting. The next month we have Australian GP and Italy GP.
Yeah,
So,
Imola.
pardon?
There are there are two races in like Italy. So the first one is in Imola.
Okay.
This the one happening, and then we'll have one later in the year at Monza. Monza is more like the temple of speed. Monza is like considered the sort of de facto Italian Grand Prix. Imola is more like a, I mean, it was added in
Substitute.
the season when Imola was
Calendar
on the
regularly.
racing calendar for a very long time. It's raced under different names: San Marino Grand Prix, European Grand Prix, etc., whatever. But I think it probably went out somewhere in the early 2000s and made a return only because of the COVID curtailed season in 2020,
Last
where
year.
where the F1 circus couldn't leave Europe because of regulations in like other countries and all that. So they were racing all over, like in Imola, in Mugello, in Portimao. Like we got to see all these circuits because of that. But Imola for me is like it is one of those bittersweet circuits. Like it's where one of my heroes lost his life. Ayrton Senna was killed at Imola in the Tamburello curve.
Oh.
So and this was when I just started watching F1. Like and he was killed in like 94. I just started watching at the end of 92, and I was instantly drawn to like Senna. So 94 he lost his life at Imola, and I've read a lot about it and all that. So every time like like somebody goes racing at like Imola, I'm like I'm just reminded of like the sort of place it has in history. Um, but yeah, I mean it is an exciting circuit. Hopefully, I just hope that if it's gonna rain there, it like rains properly and not like last year where it sort of rained and then sort of dried out, and that was a bit of a mess. And I don't think it was very memorable last year in terms of how the race went about. But if it rains, let it rain properly, or else like let it be properly dry and we can have some good action hopefully.
Okay.
Another piece of information is something that's been making the rounds. It's not confirmed news yet. It's pure speculation at this point. But two companies from the Volkswagen Group are maybe set to enter Formula One, Porsche and Audi. The next big regulation change is in 2026 with the power units specifically. Audi and Porsche, both of them have expressed interest in entering Formula One, with a key rider being that the FIA switch to synthetic fuel starting that's that year, 2026. We are expecting, or it is rumored that we should expect an announcement uh, today or tomorrow. It may or may not come. Like I said, it's just speculation at this point. Porsche is rumored to partner up with Red Bull, while Audi will partner with McLaren. So that should be interesting also to see how they fare in
Nice.
the
There
pinnacle
was
of
huge
the
rumor like in the
motorsport.
almost like maybe in the last quarter of last year where they said Audi had basically completed the takeover of McLaren and all that, and both of them denied it. But that's never really died down because ultimately McLaren, as an automotive company, has had its own struggles, and it's still a fairly small operation for an automotive company. But they've had their own struggles, and like it won't be the worst thing if like Audi were to take over McLaren and just run it as a works team with their own engine. So let's see what's going to happen. Like everything is speculation at the minute, but let's see what will happen. It is definitely quite interesting to follow that.
Nice. Okay, Bimal. Thank you so much for your time. It's been fascinating uh, for 50 minutes. So definitely, I'm going back to the video. I'm going to try out to understand most of the things that you just said, and try to see the rest of the Netflix show to understand, because I'm just in the first season. I still don't know whether Red Bull is still going with. the Honda engine or they have changed or something. So I just don't know anything about it. So let me catch up with the Netflix show to understand this much better because I am understanding a lot after seeing the Netflix show. Anyways, thank you so much. Let's catch up after a month. Let's talk about Australian GP and Italian GP at that time. Right?
Yep.
Sure.
Thank you so much,
Thank you,
people.
Thanks.
man.
Thanks. Thanks, Harish. Thanks. Cheers.
Take care.
Bye.
Take care. Cheers. Bye.